Hey bro, where are you going? Subscribe now. Hello guys and welcome back on my YouTube channel. Today, as you choose, we have finally the master guide of Blackbeard in OP9. And I'm not really good with Blackbeard because I didn't test it a lot. So I will have the help of Lorenzino Messi. You saw probably the deck profile on my YouTube channel. He did really well with Blackbeard and he tested it a lot. And he is part of a new YouTube channel about One Piece TCG testing Hill, so go to follow him and all the boys on this new YouTube channel.
Guys, today I will help you with the master guide of Blackbeard. OP9 is a really strange deck, so we are gonna see something in particular on him, more in the details. So, let's start with the deck profile. Today we choose to show you this particular deck profile and not the classic Blackbeard deck profile with the stages and all the cards from the archetype, because a lot of people already talked about that list, and I also think that that's not particularly good in this meta because you miss a lot of key pieces that will come from OP10. So for the profile today, I will show you this one that is really particular because it plays a lot of cards that no other people are playing in OP9, such as Brook, 3 copies of Jack that is always played in 2 copies or 0. Then I play some touches like Iron Body, that is a pretty good counter, think for Doflamingo, and a really strong card in general that few people are playing in Teach, that is Tempest Kick, that I think is really good. And particular thing about this deck list is that it's stageless. I prefer to not play the stage in this meta because I think that in a lot of matchups it doesn't search you good enough cards, and maybe you need different things, such as Doflamingo, for example, is a matchup where you don't need the stage, and it's like a brick, a -1. So I don't want to play 4 copies of a brick against my worst matchup. I prefer to play a list that can respond to Doflamingo well. So for general strategies, this deck is very simple on paper because you need to do always the same things. So place up your board, your setup pieces, such as Doku, Laboon, Vanagur, Jack in this case, and keep control of your opponent board with your pieces. Your leader effect is really strong because it can prevent your opponent from using his own play, and often your board will be controlled by your opponent thanks to own plays. But thanks to your leader ability, you can keep your setup pieces on board and abuse this thing to keep control of his board, and then you can use your tank of Stitch in the late game to secure the game, because when you have a board that's ready to win, so with setup pieces, with barges, with removal every turn, Teach is like a seal on the game, because when you play Teach, your opponent cannot do anything essentially about your board, and from there you just win because you are too oppressive at that point. The gameplay is just that: control your opponent board, keep your setup pieces on the board thanks to your leader ability, and then play Teach to close the game. That's not really hard. So for your matchup, the mirror is a matchup where you wanna go second. You mulligan for your Barges, Black Hole, and Teach. Barges is key in the early game because it's really hard to remove if not with Black Hole. It cannot be removed in any other way in this matchup. And so you want a Black Hole to remove your opponent Barges. Tank of Stitch is really, really good in late game because it cannot be removed easily in this matchup. But with this list, you are a little bit advantaged when you have to remove your opponent Tank of Blackbeard, because the list plays Jack, plays Tempest Kick, so it's a little bit easier. But without Sage, it's clearly tougher to add your Tank of Stitch. So with this list in the mirror match, that's not so easy, but you have a better way to set up your board and control the board of your opponent. So I still think that it's a 50-50 even without stage. The strategies are very simple. You wanna control your opponent board using your setup pieces, as always. And when your board is ready, you wanna start to chain Teach. But Teach is not a card that you can play without thinking in this matchup, because a bad Teach can make you lose the game. Because if your opponent responds to your Teach, clearing it, you did nothing in the turn. And his board keep getting bigger, and your Teach has been removed, doing nothing. So play Teach with an idea. Don't play Teach just because it's good. Play Teach when you can follow up and when you are sure that he will not be removed easily. And as I said, keep Black Hole in hand for Barges, because if you waste your Black Hole and your opponent in late goes Barges, you basically cannot do nothing. You cannot remove him and you lose the game like that. And keep also in mind that in late game, you can remove your opponent Barges thanks to your 10 cost Teach, because Teach can negate the ability of Barges, then reduce with Laboon and remove with Doku. So think about also this thing. Okay, 10 cost each can also be used to remove Barges. For the Pluffy matchup, as we said, you wanna go first. And if you go first, the matchup is pretty easy. That's not a bad matchup. If you go second, if you lost the dice roll, it's more like a 50-50. So when you win the dice roll, you wanna always go first, and you mulligan for your removal pieces, such as Doku, Finger Pistol, and Laboon. The main strategy in this matchup is to keep up with your opponent board and move his board every turn thanks to Laboon and Doku. The key thing to understand in this matchup is that your opponent cannot fill his board while clearing yours. He cannot place double pieces and also clear your board. He's not Doffy, doesn't have spells to do so. So you have to take advantage of this thing, defending your setup. Often Laboon will take 2 turns to get removed from your opponent, because he will often go like double pieces 5 on Laboon, or big pieces 5 on Laboon, and you have to defend him. If you are able to do so, the Laboon gets a lot of value, and you can keep your opponent boards really empty. Sometimes you don't have the right hand to do so. So you have to understand right away that the removal plan is not the right plan anymore, and you have to start the game with Barges. That is also a very good card in the matchup, because your opponent cannot clear it in an efficient way, and if you do so, he has to charge on the leader, so he doesn't place double pieces, essentially. And so Barges is an alternative win condition. If you don't have a good removal your end, so you play with Barges. You have also to understand that your opponent will take lives for his effect. So Barges keeps a very good pressure, because he will go to 3 or 2 life on his own. And having these Barges that swings heavily for 7, 8 is really, really strong in the matchup. And also in this matchup, Tanko Stitch is really good, because your opponent doesn't have an efficient way to clear it. So you generally wanna always summon one Teach in this matchup, at least one or two. And you start using your leader effect from the 7 on, because you wanna prevent your opponent from doing Luffy Taro plus Sangoro. Sangoro is the best card that your opponent can place in this matchup, so often you wanna hold a Finger Pistol in hand to clear it right away. In this way, he cannot draw with it. And doing so, you should be able to win the matchup pretty easily, abusing the fact that he cannot clear your board every turn. Luffy is the worst matchup of the deck, for sure, but going first, you have a curve that can actually beat him, and that's why I play Brook and 3 copies of Jack. In fact, you wanna go first, and if you go second, you will almost always lose. It's a really bad matchup going second. You need to be lucky, he needed to miss leader effect, so you really wanna go first. And you wanna mulligan for Doku or Brook, and that's the crucial piece, because if you miss your removal on 2 or 3 Dawn, you lost the game right away. You cannot miss these pieces. That's why I play also 2 Brooks, because I wanna have more cards to place at 3 Dawn. Because if you only play 4 Doku and you miss it versus the Doffy, that's over. Then you wanna reduction pieces. Banagor is better than Laboon, but also Laboon is fine. And then you wanna your Jack. Why you want Jack? Because as I said in the strategies, you want to play around Gravity Blade. So Jack, being a 11 cost, can do so, and that's crucial. Also, that's really, really useful. As we said, you need to keep up with this board. So every time he plays a 4-cost character, you want to be able to remove it. And that's why we don't use the ability of the Q in the turn we place it. Because if you use the ability of the Q to remove a searcher of our opponent, to remove a Perona, Sengoku, that's useless, because then Doffy swings on the Q and you don't have the removal. You cannot develop Van Agur or Laboon the turn after. So you are in a very bad spot right from the beginning. So you want to play your Q or even better Brook on 3, keep him on board without doing nothing with Q in this case, and then on 5 you want to place a reduction and use your Q or Brook to remove his 4 cost, because at 4 dawn Doffy will be able only to place a 4 cost, and you can remove it pretty easily. If you see Q, your board should be Q Vanagur, and your opponent board should be only a searcher if he has seen it, and his leader, obviously. So if you started with Q Vanagur, your opponent at 6 dawn should do searcher on Q, and you give it to him, and then he should play a 4 cost from end, standard, or charging under the leader plus blind leader ability. If your opponent with blind leader ability miss, that's a really good spot, because if he misses in this spot, you basically won the game, because he's at 0 pieces on the board, at 0 4 cost pieces on the board, and you just drew it 2. If you have seen Brook instead of the Q, that's even better, because your board at 5 dawn will be Brook plus Vanagur, and your opponent at 6 dawn will not be able to clear both of them. He will clear only Brook, usually, and then you will have at 7 dawn Vanagur and the Jack ready to remove his only piece. At this point, your board will be Vanagur plus Jack, and your opponent will only have the searchers. He won't have anything big to fight your board or to rush your life. And from this spot going on, the game will be yours. You will be advantaged. This is the way that you have to beat Doffy. That's why we're gonna go first, and that's why we are playing Brook, we are playing Jax, because this curve is almost impossible for Doffy to beat. Then going second, this thing is not possible, and that's why your matchup is dreadful, is awful going second, because your opponent will be able to clear your board every time and play 2 pieces 1 turn earlier. So it's terrible. And in general, you wanna play around Gravity Blade, because if he goes 2 for 1 with Gravity Blade clearing your setup pieces, the game is almost over. So that's why going first, you wanna see Jack, and that's why we play 3 Jack, because we need to see him. If we miss Jack and our opponent play Gravity Blade taking 1 for 2, that's really bad also going first. So we have to keep in mind always to play around Gravity Blade, because if we give too much value to Gravity Blade, we basically lose the game. And in this matchup, both Barges and Tenko Stitch are not very useful. You can discard it without too many problems, because Teach is often too slow. You are playing maximum 1 of him in this game, and Barges is too weak to Gravity Blade. So usually when you go Barges plus another cards, you just get Gravity Bladed and lost both of them, and Barges has done nothing. So it's not really good in this matchup. You can discard it. A really good card in this matchup is Lafitte, because he's a searcher, and he will often get attacked by the leader in the early game. So it also acts like a blocker. So it's a really good card, and you want to keep it in hand. You don't want to discard it too much. For the removal spell, you don't want to see too much spells in this game. Like 2 spells are good, not more. So you can discard it too. Sometimes you will make yourself the problem, no? Can I discard this spell? Yes, you can discard the spell. They are not crucial in the game. You wanna see your removal pieces such as Q, Vanakur, Jack, and like 1, maximum 2 spells in a game. So you can discard your spell in excess, you can discard your barges, you can discard your teach. You don't have to keep them in hand. Don't be scared. And also for this matchup, I play Iron Body. Why play Iron Body? Because it's often useful to guard the last attack in the late game. Because you will almost always arrive in a spot versus Doffy when you are at 0 life, because he's really aggressive, and he just has to charge everything under the leader, go 15 face, and normally you should lose. Iron Body permits you to guard this last attack because he's a 2 mana 6k counter that is really a lot, and you will always try to scam your opponent with this card to guard the last attack and win doing so. So I preferred to play Iron Body instead of Dragon Claw. That is also a really valid option, just for the counter power. I've also seen a lot of people playing Shockwave because it has a good trigger and basically for the 2-cost stitch of Doffy. But I think that this don't make sense because you are playing 2 copies of a cards that you want to see at 2 dawn for cleaning teach. That's not so good as a choice, because if you want to see this card so early in the game, you should play more than 2. But if you play more than 2, the deck breaks. So I don't think this is a good card. It's good just for the trigger. Another card that I'm playing specifically for Doffy is Tempest Kick. So why playing Tempest Kick? Tempest Kick is generally good because it's 1 mana, draw 1 card in the worst case scenario. Versus Doffy, it has a pretty good trigger because it can clear a cost 3 or less. So the Teach, that is the best card that Doffy can see in the matchup. And it's really useful to clear that. And it's also crucial at 7 dawn when you don't see your jack. If you started with an hand with a decent amount of milling cards, such as Myra Begins and Finger Pistol, you can use it to do a double clear, because you can do Tempest Kick and go -3 on a 4 cost, do Q to clear the 4 cost, and a 4 cost removal spell to clear the other body that Toffee could have played. So it's also useful for doing some double removal. It's not a bad card, and I think that in general it's pretty good because permits you to cycle through your deck, and versus Doffy can get you to do some double removal that could be very useful. You wanna use the leader ability as soon as you can start to do Jimbe or leader ability. That's actually true, but there is a spot when you can think about not doing the leader ability. If you go second, that is the worst case scenario, you are already losing, you can be a little bit greedy. In fact, sometimes if your opponent doesn't start with a Perona on turn 1, you can think about not doing the leader ability, because the chance of him getting Jimbe from the top with the leader effect are really, really low. That's about 2%. And you will be punched only from a Teach plus Jimbe from hand. That's not so easy, because there are 2 cards that he has to see in 6 draw. So that's not impossible, but that's like 10%. So you can bet on this one. Because if you start to do leader ability from the start of the game, you will most probably lose, because it's a -1 from the start, and that's already bad. So going second, you have to be a little bit lucky and also bet on something. So when you go second, you can think about not doing the leader effect from the start of the game. Lucci is a pretty favorable matchup. I think that 70-30. That's not hard at all. But you have to keep in mind the right plan to win the game. Because if you play in a slow way, basing your game plan on Teach, you can lose pretty easily from Kaido, the 9-cost Kaido. So we mulligan for Barges and Searchers, because we want to see more Barges. Barges is the K of the matchup. He cannot clear it in an efficient way in any turns. And so play your Barges, keep pushing, play aggressive, and defend your Barges. That is the K of the matchup, as I said. Don't swing with your Barges without thinking. When you swing with Barges, think about, can I defend him? Can I afford to use 2 cards to defend barges. When you stabilize 2 barges on the board, you will basically win the game, because your opponent cannot clear 1 barges, so 2 will kill him. Often when you will be able to play aggressive with barges, defend him, and that's why Iron Body is also very useful, because you can go barges on 4, on 6, swing with barges, play another one, leave 2 down up, and then Iron Body can protect your other barges. When you are able to do so, you basically won the game even before he is able to play 9 cost Kaido. So your goal in this matchup, when your hand is really good with barges, is to make his Kaido a brick in hand. He often will not be able to play his Kaido if you play in the right way, seeing the right card, and you will brick a lot of cards in his hand. Because Moria is a brick, Ice Age is a brick, Kaido can be a brick if you play in the right way. So that's how you want to play this matchup. Be aggressive. Because in the late game with Kaido and Jack, he's in a really good spot. It's not so bad for him. Don't be too sure that in the late game you are better than him, because in late game he can do a lot of things that destroy you. So play aggressive, keep your barges alive, and keep pushing. You start to do your leader ability when he goes to 5 or 6 down, because you don't want to give him too much value to Rebecca, to Sabo, and so on. And clearly you don't want to see Moria. Never. You never want to see Moria on his board. So when you start doing leader ability, you keep doing so. You never stop. Don't rely too much on Teach, because if you only play with Teach, he can go Tempest Kick Kaido, and you will lose the game. You will lose the game from that spot. Because if you go Stitch and he removes it right away, making you discard another card, that's really bad. You did nothing for a turn, and him punches you too much. So keep attention on playing Teach and rush with your barges. BY is a pretty good matchup. That's not a free matchup, as a lot of people are saying, but that's for sure a positive matchup. You want to go second, and you want to see your barges, because also Luffy BY as Lucci cannot remove it very easily. So versus every deck that cannot remove your barges easily, you play with him, because he's too strong as a card. Just only Doffy can remove it very easily, and that's why you don't play it against Doffy. But in every other matchup, Bargis is too strong, and you wanna play with it a lot. Finger Pistol is also very good, because Luffy BY plays a lot of 5 cost characters, so Finger is a 1-for-1 that removes it right away, and that's really good. And then 10 cost Stitch is also really good, and that's even better if you can chain it. In this matchup, you can chain 10 cost Stitch. It's not too bad, but don't play it when you lose from Raigo, clearly, because in this moment every BY Luffy plays Raigo, so try to don't be punished too much from that card. The gameplay is pretty easy. You build your board with barges, 2 or even 3 barges is perfect, and keep him at life. Every turn you start swinging 5 to the leader, because he will always give you a card, because if he takes the life, it is only at 1, you can push with your barges, make very large attack, and make him use a lot of cards from hand. The difficult thing in this matchup is that if your opponent is a good Luffy BY, he will starve you. So you have to do your leader effect in the right spots. Don't waste him. Don't use him to prevent a sub on 5. That's not useful. You need to start doing your leader effect in the perfect moment. And I think that the right moment to use your leader ability is when your opponent can play Moria. So not before that. You don't want to make him play Moria value. You don't want to see him do Moria Kuzan. It's too good. So you want to prevent always the Moria. But in the early game, you can make him play. You can stay chill. Make him play, make him do his sub, that's fine. And as always, swing with your barges when you can defend them. Like in every other matchup, when barges is crucial, keep him on board, defend him, it's your best card. You don't need to rush versus Luffy BY. So keep the game in a very slow tone, go slow, build your board with barges, and teach is pretty good, so you can chain also 2, 3 of them if you have it. But the key card is barges, keep them on board, and don't waste your spell. Your removal events are crucial to close the game, because BY Luffy will often plays a lot of blocker in the end game to not die. So you want 1 or 2, even 2 removal spell to destroy this blocker or remove their ability thanks to Black Hole and go for game. So don't waste these spells and use the leader ability in a mindful way. Don't waste cards because your opponent will starve you and close you in 2 turns. So be mindful with your ability, be mindful with your cards in hand. You will be starved in this matchup for sure. Shanks is a deck that can be played in 2 ways: aggro Shanks and control. The control version is way better in general, and that's why you have a good matchup into Shanks, because control Shanks is pretty slow as a deck, and you have a lot of time to build your board, keep your barges on the board, develop them. So that's not a hard matchup for me. I've seen a lot of people that are really in trouble with this matchup. I think that that's pretty chill. So what you need to do, Shanks as a Pluffy cannot keep your board clear while filling his board. He will often place 1 piece from for turn, and he will not swing too high with this leader, so you can protect your setup and get a lot of value from your removal pieces, your reduction, etc. So the best reduction card in this matchup is Vanagur. Why Vanagur? Because Laboon, being a 5k, can be removed from the 7 cost Edward Newgate, while Vanagur, being a 6k, cannot be removed from anything if you do your leader ability, negating the on play from the opponent. So you can play this matchup in 2 ways. You can keep control of the board thanks to your reduction, such as Vanagur, and your removal, such as Doku and Jack. Jack is really good in this matchup. And keep control of the board, starts to chain tank of Stitch, and keep controlling and going face a little bit, not too much. You don't need to be aggressive in this matchup. Also, if Shanks is at 5 life by Tendon, that's not the end of the world. You can win the game really easily, setting barges, because you will arrive at a certain point that Shanks will be low with cards in hand, and you can just win with barges really big. So you win it from that point. Your strategy is to take advantage from the fact that he cannot remove your setup pieces, and he cannot remove your barges. The key thing to understand this matchup is when to use leader ability, because I've seen a lot of people using leader ability versus Shanks when they don't need to. You use the leader ability in this matchup when they go from 7 to 9 down. Why? Because that's the range when he can play Ben Beckman, Rayleigh, Dragon. So why you are using this ability, when to use it, and the smart way to do it. So if you only have a Bargis on board and that's already a 7k, you don't need to protect him from Ben Beckman. No, that's clear. So think about what your opponent can do, because Shanks literally play the same 3 cards. That's not too hard to think about what he can do. If your board is not punched by Ben Beckman, you can also not do your effect when he goes to 7. If your board is only a big barges, you don't need to do the effect. When he goes to 8 down, if your board doesn't die from Rayleigh, you don't need to do the effect. While you are still pretty healthy and a Dragon Rush will not destroy you, you don't need to use the effect. And that's the same reasoning that you need to do even after the 9 down turn. Because usually when he is at 10 down, he will play his 10 cost big drop. Okay, the Rush Shanks, etc. But you can always be punished from some of his own play cards. So always the same reasoning. If my board gets destroyed by Rayleigh, I need to do leader effect. If my board is pretty good also after a Rayleigh, I can keep the cards in hand. I don't need to discard this card. So in this matchup, Teach is also really good because your opponent with Shanks will play like one piece for turn. Okay, so Teach can paralyze that and is a big blocker. So that's really good. You can rely heavily on Teach on this matchup. In this matchup, Teach is really good. You want to play like two of them, 2 or 3. Just one maybe is few. So this matchup is pretty easy. You just have to set up your board, keep clearing his board, and protect your setup pieces. Barges is crucial, is really strong. Jack is crucial, is really strong because your opponent cannot play any piece of his deck if you wanna clear Jack, because Jack is an 8k. It's really hard for him to destroy Jack while developing board. So abuse of this thing. As the matchup versus Luffy, he cannot clear your board. Abuse of this thing. Don't be stupid with your leader ability. Use it in the right time. If you don't have any cards that punishes you evilly, don't use the leader ability. Keep guard in hand. And don't be scared to take life. Going to life early, that's not so bad. That's fine. Because you need cards in hand. If you keep guarding your life and say something like for life, sometimes you starve yourself. Yeah, that's not good. So you can go to 2 lives. Don't be scared of that and use the leader ability in a intelligent way.
Guys, this is the guide. Thank you, Lorenzino, for your help. Go to watch and follow the new channel Testing Heal. I will leave the link in the description. If you need more explanation, just write a comment here. And I hope this will be helpful to someone who wanna play Teach in OP9, or you wanna just start to playing it because in OP10 is really good. In OP10 will change a lot. So leave a like, follow, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.